Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's CV and Caffeine. I am joined today by two of our fabulous Career Visioning and Leverage Series instructors, Marian and Shelby. We are here today to talk all about how we actually set the stage for taking the KPA and the entire career visioning process. So we're going to be on here for 20 to 30 minutes. We're glad you could be here. And if you have any questions, you can put them down in the chat and we will hop on after our recording finishes and answer them for you. So ladies, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience today, if you could. Marian, we will start with you. Tell us just a little bit about you and why you're passionate about the career visioning process.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here. Yes, so I've been involved in the career visioning process for many, many years. It sort of dates me incredibly because I started back when career visioning, I think actually it was consulting with Bain Henyon, came to Keller Williams. And Bain and Mark Willis both decided that it needed to be converted to to feel more like Keller Williams, so Kellerized it, in fact. And so I was delighted to be able to work on a team of people who did that conversion and became Recruit Select. So I worked and taught Recruit Select for many years, and then we again updated Recruit Select and brought it even more in-house to the place where we have it now in career visioning, and we have our own KPA, Keller personality profile. So it's been a journey for me, one that I've thoroughly enjoyed. And career vision is a big part of my life because I own 3 market centers, 1 in Michigan, 2 in California, and I have oversight as the regional operating principal of the Inland Empire region in California. And because of that, I am always interviewing people for various different positions. So I use it on an ongoing basis. It's a big part of what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, when you oversee that many market centers in a region, people are important, right? And at some point in every business, people are the only problem you can begin to have, and they're also the solution to everything. So Shelby, tell us a little bit about you.
My name is Shelby Ryburn. I am one of the co-founders of the More Real Estate Group in Greater Sacramento, California. And CV is a very personal story, or I guess I have passion behind CV for very personal reasons. I first got into real estate actually down in Southern California in 2006. And I was that very young, naive, like met someone, she met me, we talked for 10 minutes, decided we loved each other and thought we should get into business together, right? There was no process. And that—
Which is how a lot of people decide to hire in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can imagine, that didn't end well a year and a half later. We were completely out of alignment because we never had alignment-based conversations. And so after that time, I actually was honored to spend about 7 years in corporate America with a big financial services firm. And they had something called the mutual selection process. And it was like a 5, 6, 7-step process. And that's where I really got introduced to the depth of making sure there was alignment before you bring someone into your organization. And then when I came back into real estate, I came in as a team leader. I've spent time as an OP. I've spent time as a area regional director, and now a team owner. I've worn nearly every hat. And CV is the only tool that we use when we're thinking about getting into business with someone, because I always say it's really important to date before you get married. Typically, when you get married first, you'll date later, and that doesn't usually turn out well, right? So you can either date before or you can date after. Either one is going to happen, but one creates longevity and alignment. And so it's been a really important tool. And I think a lot of team owners don't use it with agents. They only use it with like admin or operations. And I also think that's a really big mistake. I think there's a bond that's created in the CV process that makes you really sticky with your people. So there's just a ton of benefits, and I teach it because it's something that I had a personal experience with and therefore became passionate about how to really properly create alignment with team members.
Yeah. Let's look at the actual KPA, right? Like we're here today to talk about a really tiny little segment of the career visioning process, setting the stage for taking the KPA. And as a coach for years and years and years of coaching clients and calls and offshoot conversations, one of the big things I've noticed that kind of gets botched in the career visioning process when people begin to do it is they don't set the stage correctly for the candidate actually taking the KPA. So they either give them the wrong KPA, the personal report instead of the job fit report, or there's no parameters around you should take this in a quiet area, or I want this back within 48 hours, or you should come into my office and do this. And then the next step is that goes wrong is they don't actually tell them what the rest of the process looks like. It's just like, hi, take this test and I'll call you. So from your ladies' perspective, as two folks who have been in this process for a long time and seen a lot of people take the class, gone through a lot of KPAs and hiring team members and associates, what do you see as some of those best practices for actually correctly setting the stage with a candidate on taking the KPA, and how early does that start?
Well, I'll jump in first. I think that, well, first of all, I think it's really, really important. And I agree with you, Liz, we forget a lot, or it is forgotten a lot to tell the candidate how long they can be expected to take it. Because if I don't know that and I start and then I've got other things to do or there's other stuff going on, it's going to get all messed up and I'm not going to get a good report. So telling them what their time limit is a big deal. And also, I think that it's very important to make sure that they understand that they do need quiet time, because in today's world, we do stuff in all sorts of different environments.
Loud, crazy, hectic.
In the car, oh yeah, I'll just, maybe I can do this, put the speaker on and no. So I think, we really need to go to some pains to lay out exactly what our expectations are. A nice quiet place, somewhere where you are not going to get interrupted, depending on which report it is, how long it's going to take. That'll allow you to get it back to me by, and then tell them when you expect to have it back. Because if you leave it open-ended, your CV process, it can be long anyway, and we certainly don't want to have it go, especially at that stage, because they're taking the KPA right after you've done the filter interview on the phone. So you are really wanting to get moving at that point, because now you've got multiple candidates and you're trying to narrow it down all the time. So yeah, I think that's very important and is something that we overlook, right, Shelby?
Yeah, it's interesting. I took the KPA right when it came out in 2016, but I was on maternity leave, my second child, almost 8 years ago. And my then OP called me and she said, Shelby, have you taken this thing yet? And I was like, no, not yet. And she goes, oh my gosh, I felt like an idiot. It feels like I was taking the SATs. And what's really funny, and maybe this is just me being me, but when I introduce it to candidates, I oftentimes tell that story because I think the word test or the word assessment can be really intimidating, and they immediately feel judged. Right. And so I think it is our job as the facilitator of that conversation to make sure that we bring down those defenses. And so sometimes I will tell people that exact story and I'll say, look, if my OP felt like an idiot, that gave me permission to feel like an idiot too. And so I was able to relax into it, but I would advise that you maybe, find some quiet space. I had my husband and child leave the house at that point and just give me an hour so that I could focus on it. Portions of it are timed, so make sure that you don't walk away and grab something out of the fridge, that you're really intent about just having 1 hour to carve out and get this thing done. And then I'll often say things like, and by the way, it doesn't give me some score. This isn't like you get an F or a D or an A. This is just an opportunity for us to have a conversation that helps us learn more about each other. And I can appreciate that you would probably want to do that to make sure that you choose the right fit for your future.
I think that part about the score, Shelby, is so crucial, because people they do, right? Because it's a assessment, and then they feel like they're taking this big test. And if we don't tell them, like, this is just something that's going to tell me more about you and give me some more color in your picture to make it more vivid so I understand you. They do. They're like, well, did I pass? Did I pass? Well, there's pass or fail, right? This is just adding coloring to the dynamic of the person somebody is so that we can see it clearly, right? It's kind of like taking 2 years worth of experience and cramming it down into 60 minutes and saying, here's who this person is. So since you don't have 2 years to go through the interview process.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
And if we
think
don't
if you
tell them
can-
it's not a test,
Yeah.
they feel like it's a test.
And the
Yep.
more you can position yourself as that consultant, and I think you do that beautifully, Shelby, by having that conversation with them, the better it puts you into a position of they start to understand more. This is like, I'm
Mhm.
going into a consulting relationship.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the approach from that perspective really, really matters, because then I find that they're actually excited to go through it. And so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm also a big believer that even if you get the KPA back and you pull it up and it might not be exactly what you're looking for, I think that we owe them the opportunity to go through it, because
Absolutely.
asked them to experience this arduous, painful, process that creates curiosity. And I have heard some people in our ecosystem say, well, if it's not a match for what I'm looking for out of that report, I just don't take them through it. And I think that's a grave mistake. I think we owe that
Oh,
to
I
them.
agree. I think that's really not fair to them. Nobody wants to do that and then think, well, what happened? Was I
must have
so
failed.
horrible that
Yeah.
nobody wanted to even meet
Right.
me? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And the truth is, we can make them advocates of KW, or even, the more real estate group or whatever role or company that you're trying to hire for, even if they're not a fit for us, because this is an opportunity, like Marian said, to position yourself as a consultant that cares about their future, regardless of whether that's with you or without you. And so, they'll leave our office either being an advocate of us, regardless of whether position is for them or not, or maybe someone that might not be spreading some good word of mouth about you when they
that's
leave.
right.
Well,
Right.
I think that's such a good point on there of, we have to validate it, right? Like, part of the process of career visioning is, if we ask somebody to take the time here, we owe it to them to go through the validation process. And the validation process of the KPA is so crucial on there, because let's imagine, Shelby, that you take the KPA for me. We're interviewing, I have you take the KPA. You're, with every intention in your mind, you have sat down at the desk, you have blocked out time, the husband and the kids have left the building. You're like, I'm going to do this. And then the best laid plans can always still go awry. The doorbell rings, FedEx needs a signature, the dogs start barking, one of them gets out the fence and runs down the road. It's not like I'm speaking from personal experience, this has ever happened to me or anything. All the time. All
Right.
the time. And that throws it off, right? Even if that's a 5-minute derail, your mind is now distracted, you're frustrated, the dog's gotten out, you're like, I've got to go back and take this test because it's for this job that I'm interviewing for, and your timing runs out on a section, you go to the next one, you're aggravated, you're out of sorts, it throws it off, right? Like, you will not get the same results from that as if you would have if you had your full 60 minutes to do it clear. And if I see that test and go, oh, Shelby's a low fit, I'm just not even going to talk to her. I never get to know that something went wrong there and actually validate it. The validation is important on that because it lets us know how accurate it actually is. And I've had a lot of KPAs that I have validated that just don't show up in alignment. And then as I dig deeper from that consultant approach, I find out the dog ran out, the baby started crying, dinner was burning, right? Like, things happen in people's lives. And that's when that started happening to me when I was hiring for my team. That's when I went back and said, I'm bringing this in-house. How can I control this environment so I'm having less inaccurate KPAs so I'm getting the best data possible? And so I'll share with you guys, one of my best practices for doing the performance assessment is I book it as an appointment in office. They come and take it on the computer where I can control the environment. They get to show up on time. We've got it ready. They spend their hour. This is another hoop for me to see how they show up. And it's a controlled environment, most importantly. So I get the most accurate information on that assessment as possible. Now, it's a little bit of extra work on my part and theirs. And I get better results on the performance assessment because we don't have those interruptions. Working from home is great until it's not.
Yeah. And that's wonderful if you have that opportunity. It depends where, in my case, I'm often dealing with people who are, a long way away. And so we don't have that, we try and minimize the amount of travel and stuff until we're sure that to move forward. Well, not sure, but at least we've got some.
You're
of the
intrigued enough to
thing
be
out of the
moving
way.
forward again. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we do that either, but I love the concept of doing that just to eliminate distractions. I think for us, Marian spoke to what happens before they take the KPA, which is called the filter. I always call it the sniff test. And so for me, even though we want to make sure that we're showing up as a consultant for them and helping them on their journey, regardless of whether that's in alignment with us or not, I also use assigning the KPA as another layer of a sniff test because I want to know how long they're going to take to jump on it. And so even if I've set the tone and said, hey, we're really looking for you to accomplish this in the next 1 to 2 days, there are times that it's been 3, 4, 5, 6 days and I'm unimpressed, right? Because that is typically an indication of their responsiveness.
Well, it begs the question, how really excited are they about this opportunity?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we kind of use it as another layer of a sniff test, but I love the concept of helping them control their environment because sometimes there are all these things that can happen. I'll never forget, I got one KPA back, and this was someone that I had like an incredible conversation on the phone with during the filter. And I was shocked at how the KPA came back. I just was, and I don't remember specifically, but just I remember being floored because it wasn't what I expected.
Yeah.
Come to find out, her boyfriend showed up while she was taking it, had a lot to drink prior to that.
Aww.
And walked in the middle of it, and they had a massively huge fight. And so that impacted, and then she I think she had like just logged on to start it, but hadn't quite started it, and took it right after that in that mental state, in that state of mind. And
That
so,
changes things.
that changes things for sure. And sometimes people will be like, oh, well, should I retake the KPA? And they really don't suggest that you do that unless you had some kind of like life altering something. But in that case, I just asked her to find a quiet space to try and retake it. And turns out it was completely different. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, that's a great point, right? We can't always control the environment, right? It's ideal for me to bring someone in, but as Marian's point, if we're interviewing people who are either it's a private interview, right, where we can't have them be seen, which happens at certain calibers of positions that you're hiring for sure, or it's somebody who is distant, right? Setting that tone is important. Let's talk about setting the tone about what happens next. How do we prepare the candidate for now? Hey, you're going to take this test. You're going to take this performance assessment. How do you ladies like to set the stage for what the rest of it and what will happen during validation and post-validation if it's going well? How do you set that part of the stage with the candidate?
Okay.
Go ahead.
For me, what I like to do is I like to tell them exactly what the expectation is. If you don't, you'll get to the end of the thought process, and each time they expect it to be over and they're going to either get an offer or not. So I let them understand exactly what the process is going to be. I'm going to interview you here, and we're going to do this, and then we'll have another interview. Then I'm going to have you meet some people in the office. I make it sound very casual, but give them an idea of exactly what is going to be involved. I tell them sometimes we do these 2 interviews together because I usually do. For myself, I like to do the validation and go straight to the thought process, then start having, usually I have some people help me with the references. And then the last 2 interviews, I like to do, right together, back to back, the life story so that it's moving along. But I let them have a complete expectation for the entire process. And I tell them, I know this might be a little different from what you expected. Our intention here is to have an opportunity to really get to know you and to make sure that this is a good fit for you. We want you to get up in the morning and have a real excitement and spring in your step about coming to work every day. And the only way that we can do that is to make sure that the job is a really good fit for you. And so I go into quite a lot of detail of explaining to them why we go through this, because if you don't, I guarantee they're going to think there's something wrong with them, or you know, something doesn't feel right about midway, and you're thinking, yeah, I've got quite a few more things to do yet, you know. So yeah,
And we have a
I
much
can.
longer process than a lot of companies do. And if
Oh,
they've
indeed
been
we
on the
do.
receiving side of a process like that and
Yeah.
they're not told what it
Mm-hmm.
is, it can be quite
Mm-hmm.
confusing. I was
Yeah.
interviewing one of our KW talent members, Susan Glenn's, who's a OP up in upstate New York, one time, and we were talking about accountability. And I think the statement that she used when we were talking about accountability also stands true for this. And she said, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. If we are
Yeah.
not clear with them, it creates confusion, and that is unkind to somebody in the situation. You just imagine you're a qualified candidate and you love a job. Like you're like, I want this role. And yet you go through this process and it's 3, 4, 5 weeks, and there's just always one more step, and nobody told you it was going to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder, like you said, Marian, is there something wrong with me that I have to keep going through this? Like I thought these were going well. And
Right.
yet they don't realize that you're getting to go through these because these went so well, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
clear is kind comes to mind as I hear you guys
Right.
talk.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy to. I also think that it's just if you've got a candidate who's really talented, sometimes you're trying to slow yourself down because you don't want to miss anything. You want to make good decisions. But if they're actively and aggressively looking for another position, if they're not clear as to what your what the expectation is for the process that you're going through, midway through that, they're going to decide, you know, I like them, but I don't think they like me. They're not sure about me. So I'm going to go and take another position, and you'll lose candidates. Whereas if you make it really clear, they will wait. They'll stagger their look so that it'll, you know, so that they don't miss an opportunity.
Yeah, I would echo that. I was on a text thread, well, I still am, of a bunch of KW people last week, and they said, hey, you know, are you guys losing candidates in the CV process because it takes too long? And I hear that from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's important to remember that if we don't set proper expectations with our buyers and sellers, there's a breakdown in the process. And so this is no different. We just have to set expectations in the beginning of the conversation. And at the same time, I also think there's something to be said about being very present when you're validating the KPA, because sometimes there are distractions even when we are in front of the person validating the KPA with them, right? Like someone's walking by my window, someone's knocking at my door. Have you ever had that person that like there's a window in your door and they just stare through the
They
window, hoping
hover.
they can turn your attention to
The
them?
hoverer, yes, yes, I know all about the hoverers.
My gosh, I will never turn my attention away from the candidate because that will immediately make them feel unsafe and unheard. And to Marian's point, as long as we've set the tone and set the expectation for the process and they understand the objective is alignment to make sure it's the best fit for them, then there's a bond created in that KPA validation that is hard to break. I find that people can't wait to keep going beyond that, but not if I'm not present. The moment that I turn my attention away once, much less multiple times, I'm going to lose a relationship. I'm going to lose rapport, and I'm going to lose trust. And so I don't find that people aren't willing to continue to go through the process once you've communicated that expectation and been very present. In fact, they're excited to continue to go, and they really start to understand the value in the process and what they're trying to achieve.
I
Yeah.
think it's really important that you said that, Shelby. I have people from time to time that come to me and say, are you find you lose candidates? I get the same thing through coaching and through our community. And yet you don't quite have that experience. And that's because clear expectations can solve almost every problem. It's usually a lack of clarity and mutual agreement on expectations when we run into problems like that. And that can solve it, clear expectations. So we've got 2 minutes left. So here's what I want to ask of each of you ladies. Give us your one takeaway. The one thing, if people have heard nothing else in this last 30 minutes, what's the one thing you want them to take away from today's session about setting expectations on the KPA? Shelby, we'll start with you.
So I just taught it last Thursday and Friday. So I would say the one thing I shared with them is that, you know, Gary Keller has created this company on the basis of training. And I think that we have to remember that the MREA book is a fundamental guide to success. And if you're ever going to bring even one person into your world, that also means that CV is a fundamental course that is a guide to your success. And that doesn't mean that we take it once, doesn't mean that we read the MREA book once. I think it's really important to take it once a year, or at least once every 18 months, and probably from different instructors, because I think we all need a reminder to slow down, reflect on how we do in the process, how we can improve so that we can bring better talent into our worlds to empower our futures.
Yeah, lovely. Well said. I think if I was to give you one thing to take away from it, I'd say we're a company of systems and models. This is one of our models, and it's a very precious model, and it's one that the company has worked so hard with for so long. We've updated it. We've I mean, the course that we have now, the latest course, I Like You, Shelby, I taught it the day before yesterday. The edition is version 5.1. Both 5.0 and 5.1 came out in 2023. There's a massive amount of work that goes into this, and this is part of our value proposition. So embrace it, because giants have gone before you, right? People have understood that this is a need. We need career visioning because talent is everything to your success, the people you put around you. And this is a way to ensure, to the very best of your ability, that you're going to pick the right people to put around you.
Well, you heard it here, folks. You're either going to put the work in on the front end before you hire them, or you're going to put the work in on the back end, replacing them and all the accountability and all the hard things. So ladies, I want to thank you, Marian, Shelby, for being here today and donating your time to this wonderful cause to help everybody understand the CV process at a higher level. For the rest of you who have been watching with us, if you have any questions for Marian or Shelby or myself, you can pop them down here on the Facebook comments or YouTube comments. We will check those and get back with you. And we will see you all on our next CV and Caffeine. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.